go. Yep. Okay, so I think we're recording.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you for the reminder. So not knowing Mitty, I did what I usually do when I don't know anything. I go to Google. I don't like to read, so I just click on the images. And so that gives us a lot of great pictures of Mitty. Tells us he's an expert in Zoom and he's an expert in Rotary. And in fact, he's in Silicon Valley right now, I think. He leads an organization called Camdever, which is involved in web development. And so I think he's just the little bit that I've read and seen, and I'm also reading the materials about hybrid meetings. I know that Mitty is really an expert in this area, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion this evening on hybrid meetings. So welcome, Mitty. And I'll stop sharing.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Glenn. It is so good to be here. I'm gonna go ahead and give myself an audience applause and cheers. You know, why not? It's so good to be here, Rotarians. Now, today we are going to kind of deep dive a little bit into hybrid meetings. Most of the session, or the remainder of the session, is really just going to be Q&A. But for those of you who didn't have a chance to do the homework, I am going to just quickly walk through some of the recommended best practices really briefly. I know that some of you already have, which is great. You just get a second look at everything. And you also get to see my head at the bottom of my slides over here. But so let's talk about a few best practices for hosting hybrid meetings. The first recommendation is to assign a meeting coordinator. One of the biggest issues and problems that you're tackling when you're hosting hybrid meetings is how do you make your online virtual audience feel like they're not second-class citizens to your in-person crowd? How do you make them feel like they're both getting the same quality product and they're both being recognized and that's worth their time? So I usually recommend first, make sure you have a meeting coordinator that is going to be logistically there in person, who is available while they're there in person to watch your online connection as well. So that might be Zoom. If you're using Zoom, they would be looking at the chat window. They would have their phone ready in case they're being text messaged or they're being messaged about the connection issues or anything like that. But you need someone who's separate from who's running the meeting. So separate from your club president or your MC, however your meeting style is, but have someone separate coordinate the logistics. Now, I also recommend assigning someone to be the host, of course. That generally will be your club president, although in some clubs that might be someone else, like a sergeant at arms, or maybe for that particular meeting, you have a guest host. It could be your president-elect, or it could be a visiting interactor, for example. And also have a virtual facilitator. Now, this works pretty well with the meeting coordinator as well as your master of ceremonies or host who's there in person. But the idea here is that what if the internet fails at your venue and your virtual crowd's completely disconnected from your actual in-person meeting? So it's going to be important that whoever your virtual facilitator is, they're completely comfortable with knowing what the schedule and itinerary or agenda for the program was supposed to be, and that they have a way to text or call your meeting coordinator, or they know how to communicate with them to let them know, hey, the connection went down, can you try to resolve it? And while they're doing that, they need to be able to improvise and have something for the online virtual attendees to be able to do. That could look like running breakout rooms, for example, so that there's more opportunities for the virtual audience to catch up with each other, or it might be something else. Fourth, definitely would recommend hybrid catch-ups one-on-one. What that means is that each of the in-person attendees should be able to pull out their smartphones or connect to maybe an iPad or a laptop at their table or station around the room and be able to find a breakout room and connect with a virtual attendee. You could do small groups of 4 or 3 in breakout rooms, or you could do one-on-one if you'd like. But the idea here is you want to answer the question, how can I make people feel like they are seen, whether or not they're there in person or they're connecting virtually? How can I make sure that everyone feels like it was worth their time to sign on? And 5th, designate time for virtual breakout rooms. So this is a little bit different because you want to make sure that in your schedule, if you have anything going on in person, for example, a bathroom break, or maybe you have a meal service or you have coffee service, you want to make sure that during that scheduled time, there's an opportunity for your virtual facilitator to be running virtual breakout rooms so that your virtual audience isn't just sitting there, just wondering what to do. Actively acknowledge individuals. So this one goes to just kind of making sure that you're calling out names as best as you can in positive ways. This could be saying, happy birthday, Mary, or it could be saying, it's so good to see Sam on the line, or it could be anything else. It's sometimes really helpful to actually have a designated member of your club who is responsible for this particular task, because whoever is running the meeting, often the club president, it's going to be pretty hard for you to scroll down that list of participants while you are trying to be a master of ceremonies for an in-person and virtual audience. So it's always helpful to have someone who can maybe pass notes or can be redirected to and can be asked, so, would you, Sergeant at Arms, would you like to point out anyone on our virtual attendees or anyone in person to recognize? 7, personal attendee follow-ups. So whether or not you're in a small club or you're in a large club, it's going to come to a point where it's going to be difficult for you to always recognize every member who attends either in person or virtually. So it's really important, though, that we make sure that no one ever feels like they weren't seen. That's one of the biggest things we want to make sure we avoid. So it's great to usually have someone who's responsible with taking attendance or taking a list of who's online, who's there in person. And if you have a committee or a task force within your club, maybe it's just 1 Rotarian, maybe it's 3, maybe it's more, but you can assign Rotarians and tell them, instead of like secret Rotarian, which some clubs do, where you shake hands in person, instead of that, you just follow up with a text message or a message to some of these Rotarians later on and tell them, hey, John, it was really good to see you at the meeting. I know we didn't have a chance to chat, but just want to say hi, and anything like that. So for those of you taking screenshots, and this was also similar to what's linked in the homework assignment, but these are the 7 best practices for hosting hybrid meetings. And with that being said, I do want to jump into a best practice kind of case study of a Rotary Club that's running hybrid meetings. I'm going to share with you a video of some of the meetings they broadcast. And then I want to deep dive a little bit into the behind the scenes of tech, as well as answer any questions you might have. So hold on while I switch my share screen. And if for some reason the video is not playing and it's just like stuck, please just let me know. I know that sometimes it's a little bit wonky.
Zooming to you live from Studio D in Centerville, it's the Niles Rotary Show with President Dirk Lorenz. On today's show, Dirk welcomes Alameda County Supervisor, and now Niles Rotarians and guests. Here he is, surrounded by spring fling silent auction items, President Dirk Lorenz.
Okay, let's kick this off. We've got a special treat for you today.
I paused it because I got a message saying the video was stuck. Can get like nods of heads if you guys thought it was stuck. I'm getting mixed responses, which is okay. Sometimes life is like that. I'm gonna do something different. I'm going to actually just share with you my entire screen. You can ignore some of the crazy taskbar stuff, but usually this is what fixes it.
Back in studio today, so give us a moment as we transition here. We're going to have a live flag salute from the one.
Put on a happy face and spread sunshine all over the place. Just
So, Miss Pav, when did you get into teaching, and specifically, when did you arrive at Washington High School?
Let's see, I've been teaching for many years.
Welcome to the Spring Fling Niles Rotary Home Shopping Network. I'm your host, Dirk.
And now, Rick King sings.
My funny Valentine, sweet comic Valentine.
And now it's time for almost everyone's favorite game show, the Not So Newlywed Game. Couple number one met in 1975.
Open opportunities, but Niles Rotary makes us bloom. Okay, it is time for the flag salute. Jeff, lead us.
All right. So hopefully the video played out the rest of that. So you saw basically snippets of how the Niles Rotary in Fremont, in my district, run some of their Zoom meetings, but they transitioned to hybrid meetings for the past several weeks. So they're still taking this kind of meeting-tainment style. So if it looked like a collage of different clips, that's exactly what it was. And the main purpose of sharing that was kind of to share with you, a different style of meetings that you could kind of snippet from. So everything from assigning one or a few of your members to go out there to do member interviews and spotlight videos, which can be pre-recorded and then sent over for your meeting, down to having video bumpers or intros per section that are pre-created that you could easily share screen, right? So at the very beginning, when you saw or you heard that it was the Niles Rotary Club had an announcer voice, all of those bumpers are just kind of pre-created. They're like 3 or 8 seconds long, but they're shown live. So none of what you saw was done in like a post-production scenario where you would take the Zoom video and then edit. None of that was done like that. Everything you saw for their meeting is done over Zoom, and they record it however it goes over Zoom, and that's it. So I want you to kind of imagine different pieces of what you saw and how you might make that work out for your hybrid meeting. That being said, I do want to go ahead and start fielding some questions. I know that there are a lot of questions surrounding tech, as in what technology to purchase. I just want to get a quick show of hands. Either you can wave your hand here or in the chat or raise your hand if that's one of your questions, like what to buy. Okay, I see several hands. Let me walk you through some recommendations first. And then let's, while I'm doing that, if you have very specific questions, go ahead and toss that into the chat, or use the raise hand feature on Zoom and I'll know to call you for a verbal question. But we want to make sure that we spend what's remaining in the session to like problem solve any issues that you're anticipating. And then I can also talk about some other tips and recommendations as well. Let me go ahead and first share. I'm going to share Amazon actually. So when it comes down to tech, there are generally 3 pieces that you're looking at. You're looking at audio or sound, you're looking at video, and you're looking at lighting. Those are generally the 3 main tech pieces that you need to kind of account for. There are so many different devices and so many different ways to solve for your need. Also, your need's going to be very customized to your venue. It's going to be customized to you, how many people you have there, how big the room is. So by no means is what I'm going to say the only option for you. But these are some pretty good options if you don't have any idea of where to start. So I'm going to start really quickly with a couple of audio recommendations. And one of them it's actually one of my favorites, but it's a Blue Yeti microphone. So if this is going to be a great option if you're in I'd say small to mid-sized room, and if you're looking at, I'd say under 30 people in person. If you're getting larger than that, you're probably going to want multiple microphones set up throughout the room. And how you would change the audio setting would just be, you would need someone on Zoom muting and unmuting based off of what your needs are, right? So there are different ways to account for that, but you're generally going to be, for an audio perspective, going to be looking at audio for the stage, right? So for your speaker or for your president or whoever master ceremonies is, and then an audio for Q&A. So it could be a floating mic or it could be stationary, but people have to walk up to it. So that's one option. Another option is and works especially well if you are in a small room to maybe medium size room, but there are also a lot of conference phone speakers. So the key here though, ultimately, so Anchor has one that I would recommend, but the key here is actually you're searching for omnidirectional microphone. That's really what you're doing. So regardless of where you're purchasing this from, you want a microphone that is in multiple directions. So omnidirectional is like, it's in every direction and inputs sound, right? Not just a single direction or 2 directions. So generally speaking, all your omnidirectional microphones will have usually minimum 6 microphones built into it. At sometimes 4, but usually at least 1 per corner. And as you'll see in this one, they have 6. The little circles are each microphone. Blue Yeti also runs multiple microphones as well, but it also has some different settings. So it's going to be based off of what your needs are. But those are just 2 recommendations. You'll notice though the price points for these that I'm pointing out are a little bit higher. There are so many options. Let me hit back. So when I search for omnidirectional microphone, first of all, it corrected me and said that it's omnidirectional microphone, but you'll see that there are cheaper options available too. So if you're in a pretty small room, I would say the cheaper ones are actually probably going to make more sense for you. But again, if you are in a larger room, you may have to splurge for something bigger, or you may just have to intentionally ask yourself, when do you really need audio, right? And so the omnidirectional is really, if you want to be able to capture sound from the audience at the same time, like laughter, for example. And yeah, I'll definitely leave my contact info, which would be just Rotary, mittychain.com, in case you have any questions. In terms of video feeds, there are so many options. I would begin with what you have available in your club. I would look for tablets and even smartphones, like the latest smartphones. So if you have iPads available, I would start there, to be honest with you. If you are looking to augment that or purchase additional webcams, Logitech makes some really great ones. This Logitech Pro is really great. What you're really looking for is you want a minimum of 1080p for your webcam. That's really the key point there. Otherwise, I would recommend figure out what works for your budget, but also look at what the reviews are. You're generally looking for something that's been reviewed by thousands of people and have at least usually 4 stars, 4.5 stars. And the way Amazon or most of these marketplaces work is that they actually tell you what's the best rated ones overall, and they give you quite a few options. Like you'll see this best value one is $30, whereas the one I was recommending is $80. So
excuse me, Mitty, I believe you're stuck on the Blue Yeti mic. Are you on to some other screen? Or are you still talking about the Blue Yeti mic?
I am on another screen, but let me just go ahead and reshare.
You're on another screen. We aren't.
Okay, so I'm on. Do you see this? Okay. No, all good. Definitely have to call me out if something like that happens. So I was just mentioning that this Logitech one is one that I would recommend for webcams if it's not sufficient, or if you for you to use like an iPad or an iPhone. But I would start with the iPad or iPhone. Okay, so I would say from a priority perspective, your audio is probably going to be most important, because your typical tablet and iPhone probably won't be sufficient for a full hybrid meeting. But again, I would still even start with just what's available to you. So if you have iPads, you have iPhones, I would start there and I would run some tests. So the key to figuring out what works for you is going to be, at the end of the day, you want to go to your venue that you're planning on having your hybrid meeting, and you want to test everything out, not the day of, not the day before, but you want to test out in advance, like a week before if you can, or maybe a couple weeks before. And you want to bring these devices, you want to bring your setup, and it's practice makes perfect. You want to sign on Zoom, because you have to test how fast is the Wi-Fi speed at your venue. You want to test if I wanted to use my phone data, how fast is that? And does it get cut off when I'm inside the building, because the building's materials actually block my reception or lower the strength, right? You want to test all of that out. And the only way to do that is for you to go to your venue, bring your devices, and log on Zoom, and have someone else somewhere away, like in their home, log on Zoom with you, right? That's really the only way you're going to end up testing this scenario. And as you're testing, you're going to start realizing, oh, my lighting's really low. Maybe I should get an LED light, and maybe I need a tripod for it. Or maybe you're gonna take your iPad and you're gonna be there and you're gonna think to yourself, where do I put the iPad? Right? That's when you want to get a tripod, or maybe you get creative and you get a stack of books and just kind of lean the iPad on it. That's okay too. You know, you can do whatever bootstrap method you want, but the key here is, the best way to be prepared for your first hybrid meeting is to actually just go and practice on site multiple times and just keep running different scenarios. And as you're doing that, you're going to start realizing, oh, I need other things. And you're going to pull out your smartphone, or you're going to pull out your laptop, and you're going to go online probably, and you're going to buy something. That's generally how it works. If you are looking for additional lighting, which is usually the case, is LED. Okay, just gotta scroll past the LED strips, but once you get down, you'll start seeing that if you just search LED lighting, any marketplace, Best Buy or Amazon, you're gonna see a lot of these. These are very common now. And as you kind of look at this, some of them include lights and stands. You don't always need to include the light and stand. It's really up to you.
Mitty, we're back again on, we've still only got the webcam showing. I think you're on lighting. Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, all good.
All the time, but
you're all good. Thank you for calling that out. For some reason, I guess it's not updating, even though I switch. So I'm just navigating away. But what I've done is I've just typed in LED lighting up here. And you'll see that there's actually different options. So we can go LED lighting for video recording. And you'll see that Amazon, most marketplaces will give you a lot of different options. And some of these already have tripods set up. And it's really going to be up to your venue and your needs on which one you need, right? So some of these are a little bit more pricey than I would want. Like, for example, $190 for these two. I don't know if I would need it, right? $30 looks a little bit closer to what I would expect for some of these LED light options. So just something to keep in mind. And in fact, let me just really quick.
I'm going to interrupt again because Edward has a question. And I know that when you're screen sharing, you can't see the chat.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was actually the end of some of the tech I wanted to run through. So let's just hop right into the questions. Edward, would you like to ask the first question?
Hello, everybody. Hey, Mitty, thanks for doing this this meeting because so I have a group of about 12 to 15 that meet on Zoom every week, and we do a kind of both in-person and hybrid because we're in Washington State, and we are the area that we're in a phase 2 to 3 where we can have members as long as they're safe, and a lot of us are already fully vaccinated. And so I wanted to ask, we're in a restaurant that has a back room that it's an open area, and that my question is when we do our Zoom meeting on, let's say, an iPad, and then somebody else wants to use their device, is there a way to avoid the audio interruptions and the audio echo? And I'm sure you've experienced that maybe in a meeting where we can, if people want to, sit across the way and be on the Zoom meeting, and since we don't have the audio or video just set up quite yet, how that would be a way to, again, I apologize for not seeing the homework, but just maybe one thing that I could ask is how do we avoid the audio static, I guess?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the key there is a great Zoom moderator is probably what you're looking at, but that's also a plus education, right? So there needs to be a base level of education that you're providing your members, that you tell them, hey, if you're here in person, you're connecting with your own smartphone or your own device while you're here to the Zoom meeting, please just make sure you completely turn off the sound or volume to 0% or mute it. That's gonna be key because even if you, from a Zoom perspective, you're muting everyone's microphones, as long as someone's device out there has a speaker that's on and still you can hear the sound, you're gonna hear the echo, right? So a little bit of it's education, but a little bit of it's also just having a Zoom moderator that's could be your meeting facilitator, for example, who is just there, who's coordinated and just looking at Zoom and looking at, whose microphone's on. Does it have to be on? If not, they're going to go on mute. Thanks for a question.
We actually had a really good question early on from, I think it was Brenda, who was talking about how you got your face situated on your PowerPoint.
Yeah, how did I get my face situated on this PowerPoint? That is a really great question. Let me see if I can pull up a example screenshot of this. But there's actually fun fact. First you have to update to the latest Zoom, as many of you have probably heard that several times in your life. But there's like a new version of Zoom like almost every other day. So if you didn't update your Zoom yesterday, you're probably not on the latest version, actually. I kid you not, I updated Friday and then I updated yesterday. So it's a manual process. It does not tell you need to update, unfortunately. So that is the one thing I would just recommend before you host a meeting. I always recommend that you check what version you're on. But generally speaking, I'm on Zoom for work every day too. So the first thing I do is I check my email, but I also check if I have the latest Zoom version. But if you see my screen here, this is just a screenshot. So I took a screenshot earlier. You notice that like in this screenshot, I'm by myself. The best way to test and become a Zoom master is open Zoom by yourself, where no one can judge you, and play around with everything. That's like the best way to become a Zoom master. Play around with every single button possible. And that includes every one of the screen share options, because you'll notice here, I'm on the advanced tab at the top of the screen share dialog. There's a basic tab in advanced, in advance, that's where I would go for like computer audio so that I can share with you like an audience applause or something like that. Portion of screen is actually really great too, in case all you need to share is like a specific portion of your screen and you want to move things in and out of it. But what I did was slides as a virtual background. So once you click on that and hit share, it will give you the option of being able to share a keynote, which is an Apple version of PowerPoint, or a PowerPoint presentation. And once you do that, it's exactly what you saw is what happens. So it's a built-in feature to Zoom. It's just less used.
Thank you.
Of course. I'm looking for other questions. I know there was a question about earlier from Veronica asking a little bit about favored methods for consistency and connecting. At the end of the day, it's going to be really up to your venue and what's available. I always recommend that the main computer that's presenting, if possible, hook it up with a wired Ethernet connection for your internet at your venue, if that's possible. It's not always possible, and that can become its own situation. If not possible, that's okay. But if it is possible, what they'll do is they'll make sure that as long as the internet is working at the venue, that computer always has a connection. With Wi-Fi, sometimes with older routers, like you will get dropped because there are too many users connected to it. And then there are other issues too, because Wi-Fi, as you might imagine, being wireless signals, actually have congestion. So just like how we have air traffic congestion, there's Wi-Fi signal congestion too. So that is a topic for another session. But the moral of that story is, if you can be Ethernet wired, that's recommended. If not, just go and test it out in advance and just see what the connection is like. And be prepared after your first meeting that maybe you need to talk about the internet situation a little bit more. There's a question. Yes.
Just real quick, is that connected to the router, correct? The Ethernet?
Yeah, correct. Okay. Usually connected to the router. And then there's a question in the chat from Bruce talking about, what should we show attendees who's online? So this is going to be dependent on your agenda, but I usually recommend that your online attendees are going to be focused on the main screen, which is going to be your stage, right? So your stage is probably going to include your in-person president or whoever is there available for that. And then also, in addition to that, it could include like the bell, it could include your club banner. If you buy like piping and drapes so that you can kind of create backgrounds, that gives you the option of being able to move things around, right? So when you do a virtual background, you'll notice that it's harder sometimes to see hands or objects that you wave into the scene. You can kind of see some of these, but when you do if you don't have a virtual background, then you have the option of like bringing a wheel for raffles and anything like that as well. So it's just up to what you want to do. But for the in-person attendees, I definitely would recommend multiple monitors or projectors, depending on what your setup is going to be like. When I say monitors, I mean either big computer monitors or big TVs, whichever works for your setup. And if you have each screen set up for a different device, it'll give you the option of having multiple Zoom accounts, and each one can show a different piece of Zoom, right? So as you'll probably notice with gallery view, there's a max number depending on your device. It's either going to be like 25 or 49 people that you can see in a gallery view. And then you get multiple gallery screens, right? So it's really important that your in-person audience can see your virtual audience as well. So you're going to, in addition to recommending your virtual audience to turn on their webcam, you're going to want to have multiple screens set up so that there's going to be a separate screen for the PowerPoint slide if there's a PowerPoint slide, but there's also like a separate screen to just see the virtual audience. And if you have a big enough group, multiple screens to see the virtual audience. Other questions? Yes, Roy.
Yeah, just to understand, Mitty,
when you are having a meeting, the members that are there physically are also part of the virtual meeting, either with their own phones or notebooks or notepads or whatever. Is that the kind of the concept? Or at least sharing so that everybody is virtual, but the people that are in person are there on a different level, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So it depends on your setup. So generally how the hybrid meetings I've seen have worked out would be that there's some social distancing happening with the seating, but generally we've been seeing about 10 to 20 people get together in person, and there's a camera that's fixed on the audience. There's a camera that's fixed to the stage, and there's some microphone setups, but the audience are not all connected with their own devices, right? So a lot of them are just sitting there and they're just watching. Some of them are connected, they're more comfortable, and that way they can actually just type and chat with some of the virtual attendees on their phones. That's okay if that's something they're comfortable with, but generally speaking, we've found that not a lot of attendees tend to be comfortable with texting essentially attendees while they have their meeting going on. So I would say that's going to be up to you, but from a virtual side, of course, everyone's going to be connected to the screen and they're going to see what's available. So it's something that during your practice runs, as you're thinking about it, think about, what angles can you set up for them, right? Can you set up like a separate iPad on a tripod that is just a side angle of the room? Can you set up another one that's in the back? Can you set up another one that's just like in the front? Just so that if they want to, they could pin certain videos and just kind of look at it from a different perspective. So those are just things you want to think about, but will be unique to your room and your setup, right? Because if you're in a 12-person conference room, you may not need multiple angles. You may just really need one device, and you may just need one omnidirectional speakerphone in the middle.
Mitty?
So, sorry, excuse me, can I just finish?
Yes.
So the show manager would be the one that would be controlling the various devices that you might have spread around the room? Is that the idea?
Generally speaking, one person would control all of that. What you call them is going to be up to you. It could be the meeting coordinator, or it could just be someone responsible for Zoom, or it could be someone responsible for like audio, video, right? Whatever you call them. But I would always recommend one person is the one remotely controlling all of them. And all they're doing, just to be clear, is muting and unmuting or turning on and turning off. That's really all they have to do. They should all be pre-set up in advance, so that they're all on and they're all live, basically. So in theory, you could do that all from a Zoom window.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Paul.
Mitty? So I would say one thing we want to keep to a minimum, especially if we're on wireless, is the amount of devices that are connected to that wireless, because that's going to, like you says, more people on the bandwidth is going to slow it down and you're going to get video chopping and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right there. So again, this is going to be dependent on your venue and the internet connection there. But even if you have blazing fast internet speed, the more people you have connected, the slower the Wi-Fi gets. It's absolutely true. So there's no easy answer for this, because you have to really test it out and find out what your limits are going to be locally. I would always recommend for your members, if they're going to connect in person and they're not critical to the setup of what you have going on for your hybrid meeting, I recommend you ask them to use their own cell phone data plans if they're comfortable with that, because that will free up your own venue's Wi-Fi. That being said, though, again, it's dependent on your venue space. I'll type in a website you can use for. There's so many, but you can use like speedtest.net, for example. And you can plug that in when you're at your venue connected to Wi-Fi, and you can plug that into your browser and it'll just run a speed test for you. And that's the speed of your local connection there. If you're on like a cell phone and you do that, just keep in mind, if you're not connected to a Wi-Fi, you're just testing the data speed for your phone, which is okay too, because you do want to sometimes know, is your data speed and your reception good at your venue? So there's a couple questions, and I also see Dave's hand up. So let me go to Dave first, and then I'll answer these questions in chat.
Rather than the directional mic, how about having a second hands-free mic with using a mixer? Does that work as well?
Yeah, like a portable mic you would walk around. So I'm whatever works. I think with the portable mic, there's two issues there. One is connecting the portable mic to a computer, because you need to get the audio feed into Zoom, right? So that's one thing you would have to solve for. There's definitely ways to do it, but I just want to point that out. The second thing is also like how comfortable are the folks in person. With everyone vaccinated, I don't think that's an issue. If you have some folks who are not necessarily vaccinated, the transfer of an object that you have to get right next to someone for could be potentially an issue. I don't know. Again, it just depends on your own club. So I would say potentially it's a great option. Otherwise, I would consider stationary mics that people just walk up to. But there are a lot of different ways to do it, including the omnidirectional, right? Like, again, if you have only 12 people in person, you're at a conference room, just put that omnidirectional speakerphone in the middle, and that might actually be all you need. So I see a question in the chat about just understanding what cameras and also laptops, you need a soundboard. You know, at the end of the day, without knowing your venue size and how many people there are, I would say first start by getting to your venue and setting up with what you have available and you think is the minimum you need to succeed, right? So if that is borrow someone's iPad or take your own iPad or any other tablet, plus have 2 smartphones and maybe some tripods or something just to hold them up, or someone to hold them up, right? And just see if the Wi-Fi works and have someone at home on Zoom to witness everything. That's the bare minimum that you really need, because you need to essentially set that up, and then you need to walk around the room as if you're on stage and project your voice and say to the Zoom audience, whoever's helping you out, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Right? Like that's essentially what you're going to be doing. You want to dry run your venue, and you need to see whether or not there's some internet issues. If you play videos, are there going to be issues? As well as set up any screens or projectors you want. So there's just no simple answer for that question. So I would defer there, but if you have more specific questions, I'll type in my email again to chat. Other question was, is there a way to display the virtual attendees on a large screen so everyone can see them? So you can, at the top of your screen, there's the view, and you can actually go to gallery view instead of speaker view if you're on speaker. And that will, if you have a device with a graphics card, you actually should be able to go up to 49 people at a time. If you're seeing 24 or 25 people, it's because either the setting hasn't been turned on, which you could go to your Zoom preferences and turn on that setting under I believe the video option. There's an option to go from maximum size of participants from 25 to 49. If the option is not available to you, that just means your device cannot support it. So you do need a graphics card to support the higher amount. That being said, if you have more than 49 people, you will have multiple screens on the gallery no matter what. So that's when I recommend that you have multiple devices, and each device has its own monitor, and that way you can show multiple panels to the in-person audience at once. How do you update Zoom on a PC? Well, how do you update Zoom on a PC? As I type this into Google, you go to the Zoom client and you check the updates. Sorry, let me link this to you directly. Here. The key to many things is to go to Google and ask Google your question that you would have asked me, and they will try their best to give you the right answer within the first screen, right? But no, I have a Mac, sorry, so I couldn't answer that directly. But for my Mac, I click on Zoom at the top in my menu bar and check for updates. It's right there.
I think it's the same on the PC too, Mitty.
I have told PC people that, and they have all looked at me funny. So I now just send them to a link.
It is really easy. I know I just clicked on the top, but anyway.
There we go. Wait, so if you need tech support, Linda has just volunteered herself. Just message her. Any other questions about hybrid meetings or anything else you'd like to chat about? If I didn't get to your question, you can just flag me down or say it.
One quick comment, Mitty, is you sent out the homework, the guide to hosting a hybrid meeting club message. You sent that out. That's an excellent thing. It answers a lot of the questions that have come up, and it's in nice large print that I can even read it.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful. And I thank you. I'm glad the print size is good too. I spent a lot of time tweaking that, the print size, but that's a different thing. I do web design for a living, so that we often spend a lot of time with fonts. What version of Zoom, free or paid, is what Bruce asked. So whoever's hosting the meeting should definitely have a paid account. I don't know if that means your club has a paid account or the president does, but whoever hosts the meeting definitely needs to have a paid one. But if you're just play testing or trial running, doing practice runs, you can use a free account, that's fine. Or if you are just trying to explore Zoom, the free version has every option and feature available for like a Zoom meeting. You just are limited to like 40 minutes, right? So it just shuts off after 40 minutes if you have more than 2 people on the Zoom.
I just a quick question in there. We've talked about Zoom. Some clubs are looking at Microsoft Teams. Do you have any bias there one way or another, or one reason why we would select one platform over the other?
That's a tough one. They're competitors to one another. So honestly, it is whichever platform you as a president or you as leadership choose to go with, or whatever your club is most comfortable with. That being said, if you just really don't have a preference, like I personally use Zoom meetings, but that's because I like the platform a little bit more. But I also am in Microsoft Teams for like, if I'm in a client call and they prefer to use Teams. So both are pretty comparable. So they have about the same features. I honestly can't really say that, one or over the other. It's really just your preference. This question in the chat, are you suggesting a Zoom audience only have view of the speaker and not also have view of the room? No, I'm not. I'm recommending though that there definitely is a main picture or main video feed of the stage for them. But I would definitely recommend that whoever the virtual attendees are should be able to see the in-person attendees too. So there should be, bare minimum, there should be 2 devices in person with webcams on, bare minimum, right? 1 to the stage, 1 to the audience. It's the bare minimum setup that you should be thinking about. Ideally, you have different angles, right? So let's say you have 15 people there and you have a decent sized room, not too large, then maybe you have 2 cameras that are angled on one side and the other side of the room, one that is directly on the stage, maybe a second one on the stage in case your president or whoever's presiding wants to actually change like camera angles for some reason. There's different ways you can play around with that, but that's going to be up to you and how creative you want to get. I would say bare minimum, you're looking at 2 cameras, 1 pointing to stage and 1 pointing to the audience. Other questions?
Rather than typing it in, Mitty, so I'm a little confused. So you've got a camera on the person, let's say the president at the podium. You have a camera elsewhere in the room. How are those flowing into the Zoom, because like right now when I log on, there's one picture of me and me only, okay? You don't, you know, I don't, I'm not sure how all those cameras flow in. Do you then have to log on the cameras onto a different Zoom? Are you with me? I'm not making this very clear.
No, yeah, it makes sense. So each one is going to be a separate Zoom account, essentially logged on. And then each one's a separate video frame. Like it's like as if instead of seeing me, you saw the audience right now, right?
Thank you. That's what I wanted to know. I thought, well, are these cameras all flowing in and somehow or another you can get 2 or 3 screens from one login? But no, each of them will be logged in separately. Thank you.
Correct. And then that's also why having a virtual facilitator is very helpful, because they can spotlight or pin certain people or certain camera angles. And of course, you know, making sure that those devices are on mute is going to be pretty important too. So again, that's why having a virtual facilitator is really helpful, but also sometimes having a meeting coordinator.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, Veronica.
Thank you, Mitty. For the, and I apologize that this was covered in your notes, which were really extensive, but for creating those little vignettes and things like that you were doing, I know that you said that you were doing them live on Zoom for your Rotary Club, but is there, for example, like if we wanted to pre-record or record them during Zoom, is there a good way to sort of edit that? Like I know I saw that there was like some filters and different things that you were using. Do you have like a preferred method? I know you said you were Mac, but is there a particular, like a simple, accessible, downloadable studio, like that we could look at to kind of make those little vignettes kind of fun?
Yes, great question. So there are definitely pieces that you can pre-record and use, right? And that could be, it's a great way to do like a members spotlight, which as Rotary Club Video kind of showcase, they do like an interview of some of their members so you can catch up with how they're doing during COVID, right? So that could be fun. Depends on the device you have. If you have like a iPhone or Mac, the built-in like iMovie is actually really great, and it would probably get you a lot of what you need. I know that Canva also has a little bit of some video editing as well, but there's just also a few different video editing softwares available to you. In all honesty, if you're using like a tablet to edit some of these, a lot of these apps are like pretty much free now. So I don't have any specific recommendations outside of some Mac-based ones because I'm a Mac user, but I've heard, I have a few other ones I've heard good things about. I just can't remember. But if you email me, I will get back to you with what those names for the Android and PC ones are. But whatever works for you, right? Everyone seems to be starting in a bootstrap manner, and you know, that's just hop on Canva and you can create something.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a bit of a wild west for us Android users, but I will definitely email you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and if you find something good, let me know. And I'm happy to share that. I feel like I need to get an Android so I can know what the other side is like. All right, I think that's it for questions. If you have anything else, feel free to email me. Email is in the chat, but it's rotary@mittychang.com. Thank you so much for having me. Glenn, I guess I will turn it back to you or Dave.
Yeah, well, yeah, Dave may have something to say, but I want to say on behalf of District 5050, thanks so much for making the trip north. You gave us all some great ideas, both technical, but also creative ideas too. And it's just going to enhance our ability to create, share, engage, talk with each other. So thank you so much. And thanks everybody for participating tonight.